Betrayed and broken. The ancient oaks whispered secrets in the midnight wind, their gnarled branches casting skeletal shadows across the moonlit forest floor. Arya pressed herself against the rough bark of a towering pine, her heart hammering against her ribs as voices carried through the crisp autumn air. The scent of dying leaves and damp earth filled her nostrils, but underneath it all lurked something darker, the acrid smell of treachery that made her wolf recoil in horror. The prophecy is clear. Marcus's voice drifted through the trees, cold and calculating in a way that made her blood freeze. The moon-blessed child must be sacrificed before the next full moon, or we lose our chance at ultimate power. Arya's hand instinctively moved to her still flat belly, where their unborn pup grew. 6 weeks. She'd only known for 6 weeks, had only told Marcus 3 days ago. The memory of his smile, his gentle kiss, his whispered promises of forever, all lies. And the female? The gravelly voice belonged to Kyle, the rogue leader whose red eyes had haunted pack nightmares for decades. She's strong. Her wolf won't go down easily. Leave that to me. Marcus's laugh sent ice through Arya's veins. She trusts me completely. Getting her here will be simple. The forest seemed to hold its breath, even the nocturnal creatures falling silent as if sensing the evil that poisoned the air. Moonbeams filtered through the canopy above, creating patches of silver light that danced across moss-covered logs and fern-lined paths. This place had once been her sanctuary, where she'd run free under starlit skies, where Marcus had first told her he loved her. Now it felt like a tomb. How long? The thought clawed at her mind. How long has he been planning this? The ancient magic requires willing sacrifice, Kale continued, his words making her stomach churn. She has to come of her own accord, or the ritual fails. She will. The certainty in Marcus's voice shattered something deep in Arya's chest. I've already told her I found evidence of rogue activity near the eastern border. She'll come running to help, just like she always does. Arya bit down hard on her knuckle to stifle the sob threatening to escape. The metallic taste of blood filled her mouth, grounding her in the nightmare reality. Her mate, the man she'd given everything to, the father of her child, was selling them both for power. A twig snapped under her foot. The voices stopped. What was that? Kael's voice turned predatory. Probably just a deer, Marcus replied. But Arya caught the note of uncertainty. She had seconds to decide. Run and confirm their suspicions, or step forward and face the truth. Her wolf snarled, urging flight, but something deeper, maybe maternal instinct, maybe foolish hope, made her step into the moonlit clearing. Marcus? She let her voice tremble with just the right amount of fear. Thank the goddess I found you. I heard voices and thought. The look in his eyes told her everything. No surprise, no guilt, just cold calculation as he studied her face, searching for signs of how much she'd heard. Arya. His voice held that familiar warmth that had once made her feel safe. Perfect timing. The rogues emerged from the shadows like wraiths, their eyes glowing amber in the darkness. 5 of them, all scarred and battle-hardened, surrounding her in a loose circle. Kyle stepped forward, his lips pulling back to reveal yellowed fangs. She heard everything, he growled. Marcus didn't even have the decency to deny it. Instead, he stepped back, aligning himself with the rogues, and Arya's world crumbled completely. The prophecy spoke of willing sacrifice, he said softly, but it never specified what kind of willing. Marcus, please. The words tore from her throat. Our child. My path to unlimited power. His green eyes, once so full of love, held nothing but ambition now. Did you really think I chose you for love, Arya? You, the nobody Omega, who happened to be blessed by the moon goddess? The rogues closed in, and Arya's wolf finally broke free of her shock, flooding her system with adrenaline. She spun toward the gap between two rogues, but Marcus's voice stopped her cold. I wouldn't. He held up a silver blade that gleamed wickedly in the moonlight. Blessed silver, forged specifically for moon-touched wolves. One cut, and you'll be too weak to shift, too weak to run. Kael laughed, the sound echoing through the trees like breaking glass. Smart male. We'll make this quick, girl. The child you carry will change everything. As they lunged forward, ancient words whispered through Arya's mind, carried on the wind like a promise. The moon-blessed child shall unite the realms, but first, the mother must survive the darkness. Pain exploded across her ribs as claws raked her flesh, sending her stumbling toward the tree line. Blood soaked through her shirt, but her legs still worked. Her wolf still fought. She ran, crashing through undergrowth, as snarls echoed behind her, Marcus's final betrayal burning in her chest like acid. The Alpha King's claim. The scent hit him like lightning splitting through storm clouds. Wild jasmine mixed with rain-soaked earth and something uniquely, devastatingly her. Alpha King Daemon's massive frame went rigid as he crested the hill overlooking the ravine where his border patrol had reported rogue activity. His wolf, dormant for so many years of lonely rule, suddenly roared to life with a ferocity that nearly drove him to his knees. Mate. The word thundered through every fiber of his being as his golden eyes locked onto the broken figure sprawled among the jagged rocks below. Blood matted her dark auburn hair, her clothes torn to shreds, but even unconscious and battered, she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. The protective rage that slammed into his chest was so violent, so consuming, that his claws extended involuntarily. My king, Basai! One of his warriors began, but Daemon was already moving, his powerful legs carrying him down the treacherous slope with inhuman speed and grace. He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering over her still form, as the mate bond crashed over him in waves. She was so small, so fragile beneath his massive hands. The metallic scent of blood mixed with something else, something that made his wolf whimper with desperate protectiveness. Pregnant. His mate was carrying a child, and someone had tried to kill them both. Get the healers, he commanded, his voice carrying the absolute authority of an Alpha King. Now! Without waiting for a response, he gathered her into his arms as carefully as he would hold spun glass. She felt impossibly light against his chest, her head lolling against his shoulder as he stood. The warmth of her body, the whisper of her breath against his neck, it was everything his wolf had been searching for, everything his lonely heart had craved. The royal palace rose before them like a fortress of white marble and gleaming towers, its windows catching the afternoon sunlight in brilliant flashes. Ancient oak trees lined the cobblestone drive, their branches forming a natural canopy overhead, while gardens bloomed in riots of color on either side. The palace itself was a testament to centuries of werewolf royalty. Massive stone columns supported intricately carved balconies, and crystal chandeliers were visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the great hall. Daemon carried his mate through the grand entrance, past walls adorned with tapestries depicting the history of their kind, past servants who bowed deeply as their king strode by with singular focus. He took the sweeping marble staircase 2 steps at a time, his destination clear. His private chambers on the 3rd floor, where she would be safe, where he could protect her. His rooms occupied the entire east wing, with soaring ceilings painted in deep midnight blue and scattered with silver stars. Rich burgundy curtains framed windows that overlooked the palace gardens, while a massive fireplace dominated one wall, its hearth carved from black marble. The 4-poster bed, draped in silk the color of moonlight, had never held anyone but him. Until now. He laid her down on the silk coverlet with reverent care, his calloused fingers brushing a strand of hair from her pale cheek. Even unconscious, she was perfect. High cheekbones, full lips that begged to be kissed, and that scent that drove him wild with need and protectiveness in equal measure. "Sire?" The head healer, an elderly woman named Meredith, appeared in the doorway with her assistants. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene, their unmated king hovering over a battered woman with the fierce protectiveness of a bonded male. "Save them both," he said simply, but the command carried the weight of mountains. "Save them or answer to me." Hours passed in a haze of anxious pacing and barely contained violence. His wolf wanted to shift, wanted to hunt down whoever had done this and tear them apart with fang and claw. But he couldn't leave her side, couldn't bear to be more than a room away from his unconscious mate. When her eyes finally fluttered open, emerald green and impossibly beautiful, Damon felt his world shift on its axis. She stared up at him in confusion and terror, her body instinctively pressing back into the pillows as she took in his imposing presence. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse and broken. "Don't hurt me." The words hit him like physical blows. That anyone could make his fierce, perfect mate beg for mercy ignited a rage so pure it was almost holy. But he forced himself to remain still, to make himself as non-threatening as possible despite his massive frame and dominant aura. "Never," he said softly, his deep voice gentle as a summer breeze. "You're safe now, little mate. I am Alpha King Damon, and you are under my protection. No one will ever hurt you again. I give you my word as both your king and your mate." He watched as recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by wonder and fear and something that might have been hope. Dancing on dangerous ground. The palace gardens stretched endlessly before Arya, a maze of perfectly manicured hedges and blooming rose bushes that seemed to mock her with their beauty. 3 days had passed since she'd awakened in the Alpha King's chambers, and still, she felt like a ghost haunting these pristine grounds. The morning air carried the sweet perfume of jasmine and honeysuckle, while dewdrops caught the early sunlight like scattered diamonds across the emerald grass. Marble fountains bubbled serenely throughout the garden, their gentle music a stark contrast to the chaos that still raged within her heart. She wrapped her silk robe tighter around her healing body, the fabric soft against skin that still bore fading bruises from Marcus's betrayal. The physical wounds were nearly gone, but the invisible scars ran deeper than any claw mark. "You're awake early." Damon's voice, rich as dark honey, made her pulse quicken despite herself. She turned to find him approaching through an archway covered in climbing ivy, his powerful frame moving with predatory grace even in casual clothes. Gone was the formal royal attire. Instead, he wore simple dark pants and a white linen shirt that emphasized the bronze of his skin. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted, hating how breathless she sounded. The mate bond hummed between them like a living thing, growing stronger each day despite her desperate attempts to ignore it. He stopped a respectful distance away, those piercing silver eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. The nightmares? The fact that he knew, that he cared enough to notice, sent dangerous warmth spreading through her chest. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Come." He gestured toward a secluded alcove where a small table had been set with fine china and covered dishes. "I had the kitchen prepare your favorites." How does he know my favorites? The thought should have alarmed her, but instead she found herself drawn forward by the genuine care in his expression. As they settled into the intimate space surrounded by climbing roses, he lifted silver domes to reveal perfectly prepared blueberry pancakes, fresh fruit, and coffee that smelled like heaven. "You've been watching me," she said, accepting the cup he offered. Their fingers brushed, and electricity shot up her arm. "Every moment you'll allow." His honesty was devastating. "You fascinate me, Arya. Your strength, your resilience." He leaned back in his chair, silver eyes never leaving her face. "The way you challenge me without even trying." "I'm not strong." The words escaped before she could stop them. "If I were strong, I would have seen what Marcus really was." Damon's jaw tightened, and for a moment, she glimpsed the lethal predator beneath his careful control. Marcus was a fool who threw away the most precious gift the moon goddess could bestow. His blindness doesn't diminish your worth. The conviction in his voice made something crack inside her chest. She took a shaky sip of coffee, needing the moment to compose herself. Why are you being so patient with me? Any other alpha would have... She trailed off, unable to voice the brutal realities of their world. I'm not any other alpha. His voice dropped to a rumble that she felt in her bones. And you're not just any mate. You're mine, Arya, the other half of my soul. I would wait centuries for you to trust me. The intensity of his declaration stole her breath. She set down her cup with trembling fingers, hyper-aware of how small the space between them seemed. I don't know how to do this again. How to trust, how to... Love? The word hung in the garden air like morning mist. She nodded, throat tight with unshed tears. Damon leaned forward, close enough that she could smell his intoxicating scent of cedar and rain. Then let me show you. No pressure, no expectations. Just let me care for you. Something shifted in her chest. A wall she'd built around her heart, developing its first crack. The mate bond pulsed between them, no longer just painful longing, but something warmer, more hopeful. I'm terrified, she whispered. So am I. His admission surprised her. At her questioning look, he smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him, transforming his austere features into something breathtakingly beautiful. You have the power to destroy me completely, little mate. That's terrifying for a king who's used to controlling everything. The vulnerability in his confession undid her. Here was the man beneath the crown, as uncertain and hopeful as she was. Without conscious thought, she reached across the table, her fingers finding his. His hand engulfed hers, warm and calloused and strong. Safe. One day at a time? She asked, the words barely audible. One heartbeat at a heartbeat? Time, if that's what you need. As they sat in the morning garden, hands linked across the small table, Arya felt something she'd thought lost forever beginning to bloom in her chest. It was fragile as a new flower, this tentative trust, but it was real. And maybe, just maybe, it was enough to begin again. Enemies at the gates. The palace throne room had never felt more imposing than it did now, with tension crackling through the air like lightning before a storm. Arya stood behind a marble pillar, her hand instinctively protective over her still flat stomach, watching as Daemon sat rigid upon his obsidian throne. The massive chamber stretched endlessly before them, its vaulted ceilings disappearing into shadow, while golden torchlight danced across intricate tapestries depicting centuries of werewolf history. The polished marble floors reflected the flames, creating an almost ethereal glow that should have been beautiful, but instead felt ominous. Heavy stone columns lined the room like silent sentinels, their surfaces carved with ancient runes that seemed to pulse with otherworldly energy. The ornate double doors burst open with a thunderous crash that echoed through the cavernous space, and Marcus strode in flanked by 6 other alphas. Arya's blood turned to ice at the sight of her former mate, his cruel smile as sharp as ever. The coalition moved with predatory grace across the gleaming floor, their footsteps creating an ominous rhythm that seemed to match Arya's racing heartbeat. "King Daemon!" Marcus called out, his voice dripping with false courtesy as it bounced off the stone walls. "I've come to collect what belongs to me." Daemon's golden eyes blazed with barely contained fury, his knuckles white as they gripped the throne's armrests. "Nothing in my palace belongs to you, Marcus." "Ah, but you're wrong." Marcus's gaze found Arya behind the pillar, and his smile turned predatory. "The woman carries my child, a child prophesied to possess unprecedented power over all werewolf packs, the ability to command any alpha, to unite or destroy entire kingdoms with a single thought." Arya's world tilted on its axis. Control all packs? She had known her child would be special, but this changed everything. The baby growing inside her wasn't just powerful, it was a weapon that every alpha would kill to possess. The child will be the ultimate ruler. Another alpha stepped forward, his scarred face twisted with greed. And we, as the coalition that protects it, will share in that power. You threw her to the rogues, Damon snarled, rising from his throne with fluid, deadly grace. You forfeited any claim the moment you condemned her to death. Marcus laughed, the sound harsh and grating in the sacred space. A temporary lapse in judgment. I was testing her worthiness to bear such a powerful heir. She passed. Rage boiled in Arya's chest, hot and consuming. Testing her worthiness? She wanted to scream, to tear him apart with her bare hands for what he'd put her through. Return her willingly, Marcus continued, or face the combined might of 7 packs. War is coming either way, Damon. Choose whether you'll survive it. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Damon's power radiated outward in waves, so intense that several of the visiting alphas stepped back involuntarily. Get out of my palace, now. As the coalition retreated, their boots echoing ominously against marble, Arya felt the weight of destiny crushing down on her shoulders. Her child, this innocent life she already loved so fiercely, would never know peace. There would always be someone trying to use them, to control them. Later that evening, Arya stood on her chamber balcony, breathing in the crisp night air that carried the scent of jasmine from the palace gardens below. The moon cast silver light across the courtyard, and for a moment she allowed herself to imagine a world where she and her child could live quietly, safely. The whistle of an arrow shattered her reverie. She dove sideways as the projectile embedded itself in the stone where her head had been, her heart hammering against her ribs. 3 dark figures materialized from the shadows of her room, assassins, their faces hidden behind black masks, silver blades gleaming in the moonlight. "Damon!" she screamed as the first attacker lunged. The balcony door exploded inward, and Damon appeared like an avenging angel. His transformation was instantaneous and terrifying, his eyes blazing gold, claws extending, raw power radiating from every inch of his massive frame. He moved with inhuman speed, catching the first assassin by the throat and lifting him effortlessly. The sickening crack of breaking bones filled the air. The second attacker barely had time to raise his blade before Damon's claws tore through his chest. Blood splattered against the delicate wallpaper, staining the pale roses crimson. The third assassin tried to flee, but Damon was already there, his hand crushing the man's windpipe with casual brutality. In seconds, it was over. 3 bodies lay motionless on her chamber floor, and Damon stood among them like a beautiful, terrible god of war. "The palace is now on lockdown," he said quietly, his voice deadly calm as he wiped blood from his hands. "No one enters or leaves." But as Arya stared at the carnage, at the man who had just killed 3 people to protect her, a horrible realization settled in her chest like ice. Being with her was putting him at risk. His kingdom, his people, they would all suffer because of the child she carried. The war had already begun, and she was the prize they would all die fighting for. Walls come down. The flames in the marble fireplace cast dancing shadows across the mahogany-paneled walls of Damon's private study, their golden light flickering over leather-bound tomes that stretched from floor to ceiling. The scent of aged paper and burning cedar mingled with the lingering traces of amber and sandalwood that seemed to follow the Alpha King wherever he went. Arya stood before the massive windows that overlooked the moonlit gardens, her reflection ghost-like in the glass as she pressed her palms against the cool surface. The Persian rug beneath her bare feet was soft as silk, its intricate patterns seeming to shift and move in the firelight like something alive. She couldn't stay here, not after tonight's attack had proven what she'd feared all along. Her presence put him in danger. I have to leave, she whispered, not turning from the window. The words felt like shards of glass in her throat. They came for me, Damon. They'll keep coming. Behind her, she heard the soft click of the crystal decanter being set down on his desk, the rustle of fabric as he moved. No. His voice was quiet, but absolute. You're not running from this. From us. Arya's shoulders tensed. There is no us. There can't be. Don't you see? Everyone I care about gets hurt. Marcus threw me to the rogues because he couldn't stand being bound to damaged goods, and now those same rogues are threatening you because of me. Her voice cracked on the last words, and she finally turned to face him. Damon stood behind his massive oak desk, his hands braced against its surface. The firelight carved sharp angles across his face, making his dark eyes seem to glow with an inner flame. His white shirt was open at the collar, revealing the strong column of his throat, and his black hair was disheveled, as if he'd been running his fingers through it. Damaged goods? The words came out as a low growl. Is that what you think you are? The pain in his voice made her chest tighten. It's what I know I am. Marcus made that clear enough when he... She couldn't finish the sentence. Even now, months later, the memory of his betrayal cut too deep. In 2 swift strides, Damon was around the desk and standing before her. His hands cupped her face with infinite gentleness, forcing her to meet his gaze. Marcus was a fool. A weak, pathetic excuse for an alpha who couldn't recognize the treasure he had. Tears burned behind her eyes. You don't understand. I'm broken, Damon. What he did to me, the way he made me feel. I don't know how to trust anymore. I don't know how to be what you need. Then let me tell you what I need, he said softly, his thumbs brushing away the tears that had begun to fall. I need you to stay. I need you to fight this fear with me instead of running from it. His hands slid down to her shoulders, and she could feel the slight tremor in his fingers. Do you want to know what I was like before you came here? I spent 3 centuries alone in this palace, surrounded by advisors and courtiers and pack members, but utterly, completely alone. I convinced myself I didn't need a mate, that I was stronger without one, but I was dying inside, Arya. Slowly, quietly dying. The raw honesty in his voice made her breath catch. She'd never seen him like this, vulnerable, his carefully maintained control cracking to reveal the man beneath the crown. The night I found you in that dungeon, broken and barely alive, something in me came back to life, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. For the first time in centuries, I felt hope. Not just for myself, but for what we could be together. Damon. His name fell from her lips like a prayer. I'm terrified too, he admitted, resting his forehead against hers. Terrified of losing you. Terrified that I'm not enough to heal the wounds he left on your soul. But I'm more terrified of living without you. The space between them seemed to disappear. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell his intoxicating scent that made her wolf purr with contentment. When his lips found hers, it was soft at first, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, she melted into him. The kiss deepened, becoming hungry, desperate. Her hands fisted in his shirt as he backed her against the bookshelf, ancient leather volumes pressing into her spine. His mouth trailed fire along her jaw, her throat, and she arched against him with a soft moan. I love you, he breathed against her skin, and the words shattered something inside her. I love you too, she whispered back, the admission torn from her very soul. God help me. I love you so much it terrifies me. But as his hands began to roam, as the mating bond pulsed between them like a living thing, panic clawed its way up her throat. She pressed her palms against his chest, gasping. I can't. Not yet. I'm sorry, Shh. He stilled immediately, gathering her close. We have time, little wolf. All the time you need. In the safety of his arms, with the fire crackling behind them, and his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Arya finally allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could learn to trust again. Torn apart. The acrid smoke of dying embers stung Arya's nostrils as consciousness crept back like a cruel tide. Her head throbbed with each heartbeat, and the metallic taste of blood coated her tongue. The rough hemp rope bit into her wrists, binding them behind her back against what felt like a gnarled tree trunk. As her vision slowly cleared, the horrifying familiarity of her surroundings crashed over her like ice water. The same twisted oak trees loomed overhead, their skeletal branches clawing at the gray sky like arthritic fingers. The same circle of moss-covered stones surrounded a blackened fire pit, where orange flames danced hungrily, casting grotesque shadows that writhed across the forest floor. Even the smell was achingly familiar. Wet earth mixed with the stench of unwashed bodies, and something darker. Something that spoke of violence and death. This was the place where Marcus had first betrayed her, where her old pack had cast her out like refuse. Now she was back, heavily pregnant and more vulnerable than ever. Awake at last, Marcus's voice slithered through the smoky air like a serpent. He emerged from behind one of the massive oaks, his once handsome face now bearing fresh scars that twisted his smile into something monstrous. I was beginning to worry you wouldn't be conscious for the main event. Arya's hand instinctively moved to protect her swollen belly, but the ropes held firm. The baby kicked frantically inside her, as if sensing the danger that surrounded them both. You bastard, she whispered, her voice hoarse. How did you get into the impenetrable Alpha King's palace? Marcus chuckled, circling her like a predator, savoring its cornered prey. Money talks, my dear Arya, even among the most loyal servants. His boots crunched on fallen leaves as he moved, each step deliberate and menacing. Poor Daemon, so trusting, so naive to think his precious mate was truly safe. The mate bond that had been her constant comfort for months now felt stretched thin, like a rubber band pulled to its breaking point. Daemon was too far away, probably still dealing with the border dispute that had been orchestrated to draw him from the palace. She could barely sense him through their connection, just a faint warmth that grew weaker with each passing moment. He'll come for me, she said, trying to inject conviction into her voice, even as despair clawed at her chest. Oh, I'm counting on it. Marcus pulled a crumpled piece of parchment from his coat pocket, waving it mockingly. I left him a lovely note explaining the terms of your release, his throne for your life, though between you and me. He leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. I don't plan on keeping my end of the bargain. Around the camp, other figures began to emerge from the shadows. Rogue wolves, their eyes glowing amber in the firelight, their clothes tattered and stained with things Arya didn't want to identify. She counted at least a dozen, all watching her with hungry expressions that made her skin crawl. Their scents were wrong, corrupted by years of living outside pack bonds and moral boundaries. The child carries the Alpha King's bloodline, spoke a gravelly voice from the darkness. An ancient woman stepped into the firelight, her gray hair hanging in matted strands around a face marked by ritual scars. His power runs through its veins even now. We can taste it on the wind. Ice flooded Arya's veins as understanding dawned. No, she breathed, struggling against her bonds with renewed desperation. The rope burned her skin, but she didn't care. You can't what? The old crone's laugh was like breaking glass. Extract that power before it's wasted on a mewling infant? Oh, child, we can and we will. She gestured to several rogues who began arranging strange objects around the fire. Curved blades that gleamed silver, bottles filled with dark liquids, and symbols carved into chunks of blackened wood. The ritual circle was taking shape, and Arya realized with growing horror that she sat at its very center. The baby moved, frantically within her, tiny fists and feet pressing against her ribs as if trying to escape the cage of her body. Tears streamed down her cheeks as the full scope of their plan became clear. The power must be harvested fresh, the crone continued, running one gnarled finger along a wicked-looking blade. Still warm from the womb, still pulsing with potential. "Please," Arya whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, just take me. Let the baby live." Marcus knelt beside her, his false sympathy more terrifying than his cruelty. But then how would we steal a god's strength? How would we become unstoppable? His hand moved toward her belly, and she flinched away as much as the ropes allowed. "Don't worry, love. It will be quick." The mate bond flickered like a dying candle flame. Damon felt impossibly far away, and Arya wondered if she would ever see his face again. The rogues continued their preparations, their chanting beginning to rise above the crackling fire. Time was running out. The king's wrath. The moment Damon returned to find his chambers empty, the very air around him began to tremble. Arya's scent lingered like a ghost, jasmine and rain, but tainted now with fear and the acrid stench of betrayal. His wolf roared to life within him, a primal sound that reverberated through the stone walls of the palace and sent every living creature within a mile radius cowering in submission. Gone. She's gone. The bond between them, that golden thread that had connected their souls, stretched thin and frayed at the edges. He could feel her terror bleeding through it, her pain lancing through his chest like silver-tipped arrows. The sensation drove him to his knees, hands clawing at the marble floor until his claws left deep gouges in the ancient stone. "My king!" Captain Thorne burst through the doors, his weathered face pale with concern. Behind him, a trembling servant girl stumbled forward, her words tumbling over each other in panicked confession. She spoke of strangers in the kitchens, of Arya's collapse, of trusted guards who weren't what they seemed. Damon's eyes blazed molten gold as the truth crystallized. Marcus. The name tasted like poison on his tongue. His former beta, his childhood friend, the man he'd trusted above all others. The betrayal cut deeper than any blade, but beneath the anguish burned something far more dangerous, a rage that had toppled kingdoms. The transformation that overcame him wasn't the controlled shift of an experienced alpha. This was something primordial, a force of nature unleashed. His power rolled outward in devastating waves, shattering windows throughout the palace, causing ancient tapestries to burst into flames and making the very foundations of his stronghold groan in protest. Servants fled screaming as paintings fell from walls and chandeliers crashed to marble floors in explosions of crystal. "Gather the Blood Guard," Damon commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Call in every debt, every favor owed to this crown. I want warriors at the gates within the hour." He stalked through his palace like an avenging god, his supernatural senses reaching out across impossible distances. There, faint but unmistakable, Arya's scent trail led north toward the Shadowlands, those cursed territories where rogues made their lairs among twisted trees and poisoned streams. The very landscape there seemed to reject life, with ground that remained perpetually frozen even in summer, where gnarled branches reached toward the sky like skeletal fingers, and mist hung thick with the promise of death. Within minutes, his courtyard filled with the kingdom's most elite warriors. Men who had fought beside him through countless battles, who bore scars from defending their realm against threats both mortal and supernatural. They came without question, drawn by bonds of loyalty forged in blood and fire. "My mate has been taken," Damon announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the assembled crowd. "By rogues led by a traitor who once called this palace home. We ride now, and we do not stop until she is returned to me, or every last one of them lies dead at our feet." The journey through the Shadowlands tested even his legendary endurance. They rode hard through territories where the very air seemed to whisper warnings, where streams ran black with corruption, and the skeletal remains of ancient battles littered the frozen ground. The trees here grew wrong, their bark weeping crimson sap that stained the earth beneath them. No birds sang in these cursed woods, only the distant howls of mad things echoed through the perpetual twilight. Damon pushed his forces beyond mortal limits, following that weakening thread that connected him to Arya. With each mile, he felt her growing more distant, felt their bond stretching toward its breaking point. The thought of losing her, truly losing her, drove him forward with supernatural determination. "Hold on," he willed across their connection. "I'm coming." As they crested the final ridge, the rogue stronghold spread before them like a festering wound upon the landscape. Built into the hollow of a dead mountain, it sprawled across terraced levels connected by crude bridges and walkways. Torches flickered like malevolent eyes in the gathering dusk, and the air reeked of unwashed bodies and spilled blood. But it was the sound that made his blood run cold, the rhythmic chanting of hundreds of voices raised in dark ritual. And there, at the stronghold's heart, he could see the ceremonial circle where ancient stones stood like sentinels around a raised altar. They had already begun. Damon's roar shattered the evening stillness, a sound of pure fury that sent flocks of carrion birds exploding from their roosts. His forces spread behind him in perfect formation, weapons gleaming in the torchlight, ready to follow their king into the very depths of hell if necessary. "No prisoners," he commanded, his eyes blazing with supernatural fire. "No mercy. Tonight we remind the world why they call me the Alpha King." Then he was moving, a force of nature unleashed upon his enemies, with only one thought burning in his mind. "She will be mine again, or this world will burn." Luna Rising. The stone chamber reeked of ancient blood and desperation, its walls carved with symbols that seemed to writhe in the flickering torchlight. Dampness seeped through the rough-hewn rock, creating puddles that reflected the orange flames like pools of liquid fire. The air hung thick with the metallic taste of violence and the acrid smoke of burning herbs from scattered braziers. Arya's wrists burned against the crude rope bindings that held her to the stone altar, the coarse fibers digging into her skin with every movement. The surface beneath her was stained dark with centuries of ritual sacrifice, its cold touch seeping through her torn dress and into her very bones. Beyond the chamber's arched entrance, the sounds of battle raged, snarls and roars echoing through the underground passages like thunder in a canyon. She could hear Damon's distinctive growl, deeper and more commanding than the others, followed by Marcus's answering challenge. The very walls seemed to vibrate with the force of their clash, dust and small stones raining down from the ceiling above. Her unborn child stirred restlessly within her womb, responding to the chaos with movements that felt different than before, stronger, more purposeful. Each kick sent ripples of warmth through her body, as if liquid starlight was flowing through her veins. Something's changing, she realized, her breath catching as another wave of strange energy pulsed from her core. The sensation was unlike anything she'd ever experienced, power building like pressure behind a dam, threatening to burst free. A rogue burst through the chamber entrance, his yellow eyes wild with bloodlust and foam flecking his muzzle. "The Alpha King's bitch," he snarled, advancing toward her with claws extended. "Marcus said to keep you alive, but he didn't say in how many pieces." Terror spiked through Arya's chest, but beneath it, something else rose, a fierce protective instinct that seemed to emanate not just from her heart, but from the child she carried. The baby moved again, and this time, power exploded outward from her center like a supernova. The ropes binding her wrists simply disintegrated, turning to ash that floated away on currents of energy she could suddenly see and feel. Her skin began to glow with silver light, starting at her rounded belly and spreading outward until she blazed like a fallen star. The ancient symbols carved into the chamber walls responded to her radiance, beginning to pulse with matching silver fire. The attacking rogue stopped mid-stride, his snarl dying in his throat. "What? What are you?" Arya rose from the altar with fluid grace, power coursing through every cell of her being. She felt connected to everything: the stone beneath her feet, the earth far above, the very essence of what it meant to be Luna, to be the heart and soul of a pack. But this was beyond anything recorded in the ancient texts, beyond what any Luna before her had achieved. "I am mother to the prophesied child," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself sing. "But I am also the other half of the prophecy, the Luna who will unite what was broken." The rogue dropped to his knees, his hostility melting away like snow before flame. "Luna," he whispered, and in his voice was wonder, reverence, and something that had been missing from his existence for far too long: hope. More rogues appeared in the doorway, drawn by the light that poured from her like moonbeams made solid. They came ready for violence, but her radiance washed over them, and they too fell to their knees. She could feel their broken bonds, the jagged edges where they'd been severed from pack and purpose, and her heart ached for their pain. "You don't have to live in darkness," she told them, extending her hands and letting her power flow outward like healing water. "You can choose a different path." One by one, she felt their allegiance shift, not through force or dominance, but through the promise of belonging, of pack, of home. Her Luna abilities didn't just command, they offered sanctuary to the lost and broken. The sound of approaching footsteps made her turn. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. Behind him, she could hear Damon's roar of fury, getting closer. "Impossible," Marcus snarled. "You're nothing. A discarded Omega who couldn't even keep her mate's interest." Arya met his gaze steadily, silver light still dancing along her skin. "I was exactly who I needed to be to get here, to this moment, to fulfill this destiny." She placed a protective hand over her belly. "And now I'm something else entirely." The converted rogues rose as one, moving to stand between their new Luna and the threat Marcus represented. For the first time in years, their eyes held purpose instead of madness. Marcus's expression shifted from rage to fear as he realized the tide had turned completely. The prophecy wasn't just about the child she carried. It was about her own awakening, her transformation into something unprecedented. She was Luna rising, and her light would burn away the darkness that had plagued them all. United we stand. The rogue stronghold crumbled around them, ancient stone walls weeping dust and mortar as the battle raged through its corridors. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of blood and the acrid smoke of burning timber, while shadows danced wildly across the cracked ceiling from flickering torches that had been knocked askew during the fighting. Broken glass crunched beneath combat boots, and the musty smell of decades-old decay mingled with the sharp scent of fear sweat and adrenaline that permeated every corner of the fortress. Arya pressed her back against a pillar, her rounded belly making every movement more challenging, but her power hummed through her veins like liquid fire. Even from across the battlefield, she could feel Damon's presence, a steady, burning beacon that called to something deep within her soul. Their incomplete mate bond flared to life, sending waves of shared strength flowing between them, despite the chaos that separated them physically. "He's close," she thought, placing one hand protectively over her child while raising the other to channel her abilities. The baby kicked restlessly, as if sensing the danger surrounding them. "Marcus!" Damon's voice boomed through the stronghold, carrying an authority that made even the crumbling walls seem to tremble. "Face me, coward!" Through the haze of battle, Arya saw the rogue leader emerge from the shadows, his scarred face twisted with hatred and desperation. Marcus had grown gaunt in the months since his exile, his once powerful frame now lean and hungry, but his eyes still burned with the same malevolent ambition that had driven him to gather the scattered rogues under his banner. "Alpha King," Marcus sneered, circling Daemon like a predator. "Come to collect your broken mate? She'll make a fine prize when I'm done with you." The bond between Arya and Daemon suddenly blazed white-hot, their shared fury creating something unprecedented. Power coursed through both of them, not just their individual strengths, but something greater, something that made the very air around them shimmer with otherworldly energy. Daemon's eyes flashed gold as his wolf surfaced. "You made a mistake the moment you threatened what's mine." The battle erupted with savage intensity. Daemon moved like death incarnate, his claws rending through Marcus's defenses while Arya channeled her abilities to support him from across the chamber. Every strike Daemon landed, she felt as if she had delivered it herself. Every dodge he made, she anticipated with perfect clarity. Together, she realized with breathless wonder, we're stronger together. Around them, the rogue coalition began to crumble. Some fought to the bitter end, their loyalty to Marcus, or their hatred of Packlaw driving them forward, even as defeat became inevitable. But others, younger wolves who had been seduced by promises of freedom and power, began to lower their weapons as they witnessed their leader's downfall. "Surrender," Arya called out to them, her voice carrying across the battlefield with supernatural resonance. "There has been enough bloodshed." Those who yielded, she spared. Those who continued to threaten innocent lives, Daemon eliminated with ruthless efficiency. Marcus made one final, desperate lunge at Daemon's throat, but the Alpha King caught him mid-leap, his powerful hands closing around the rogue's neck. "This ends now." The sickening crack of breaking bones echoed through the suddenly quiet stronghold. As Marcus's lifeless body hit the stone floor, a strange peace settled over the fortress. The prophecy's words suddenly blazed through Arya's mind with crystal clarity. Their child would indeed be powerful, but it was the unity between her and Daemon that would bring lasting peace to all werewolf territories. "It's over," Daemon breathed, turning toward her with relief and love shining in his eyes. But as he spoke, a different kind of pain lanced through Arya's body, sharp, insistent, and unmistakably familiar. She gasped, doubling over as her hand flew to her belly. "Arya!" Daemon was beside her in an instant, his strong arms supporting her weight. "The baby," she managed between gritted teeth. "The baby's coming. Now." Daemon's face went pale beneath the dirt and blood of battle. "Here? But we need to get you to a healer to—" Another contraction seized her, stronger than the first. "There's no time," she panted. "The battle, the stress, everything. It triggered labor." Without hesitation, Daemon swept her into his arms, carrying her to a cleaner section of the stronghold where moonlight streamed through a partially collapsed wall. His hands were gentle as he helped her settle against some fallen stones, his battle-hardened demeanor melting away to reveal the tender man beneath. "Tell me what to do," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Despite the pain, Arya smiled up at him. "Just stay with me. We can do this together." As her contractions intensified, their bond pulsed with shared strength and overwhelming love. In the ruins of their enemy's stronghold, surrounded by the echoes of victory, they prepared to welcome their child into the world. Together, united, and ready to build the peaceful future the prophecy had promised. Crown of Forever. The golden morning light streamed through the massive stained glass windows of the ceremonial hall, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floor where Arya stood. Her breath caught as she surveyed the magnificent space that would witness the most important moment of her life. Towering columns of white marble stretched toward a vaulted ceiling, painted with celestial scenes of wolves running beneath starlit skies. The air hummed with ancient magic, thick with the scent of burning sage and wild roses, the traditional herbs of mate bonding ceremonies. Crystal chandeliers suspended from silver chains caught the light, scattering it into countless dancing diamonds across the assembled crowd of alphas who had traveled from every corner of the realm to witness this historic union. This is really happening, Arya thought, her heart racing as she felt the familiar electric pull of Damon's presence before she even saw him. The ceremonial gown she wore, crafted from silk the color of moonbeams and embroidered with silver threads that seemed to move with their own life, felt both foreign and perfectly right against her skin. The weight of the ancient Luna crown, passed down through generations of werewolf queens, sat surprisingly light upon her head, as if it had been waiting centuries for her alone. "You're trembling," Damon's deep voice murmured beside her, and she turned to find him magnificent in his ceremonial robes of midnight blue, the Alpha King's crown gleaming like captured starlight against his dark hair. "Good trembling or bad trembling?" she whispered back, managing a smile that felt both nervous and radiant. His silver eyes, those eyes that had first seen her worth when her own mate had thrown her away like garbage, softened with infinite tenderness. "The kind that says you're about to change the world, my queen." Elder Thorn stepped forward, his ancient voice carrying across the hushed assembly. "We gather today not merely to witness the bonding of mates, but the birth of a new era." His gnarled hands raised the ceremonial chalice, its silver surface etched with symbols older than memory. "Alpha King Damon Blackthorn, do you accept Arya as your mate, your equal, your other half in all things?" "I do." The words rang out strong and certain, and Arya felt their bond pulse with golden warmth. "In this life and every life that follows, she is mine as I am hers." When Elder Thorn turned to her, Arya's voice came out steady, despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "I accept Damon as my mate, my partner, my home." She looked directly into his eyes as she spoke the ancient words. "Through trials faced and victories won, through the raising of our child and the ruling of our people, we are one." The moment their lips touched the shared chalice, power exploded through the hall like lightning contained in silk. Arya gasped as she felt not just Damon's soul intertwining with hers, but the approval of every wolf present, their acknowledgement of her as Luna Queen, settling around her shoulders like a mantle of stars. A soft cry from the side of the hall drew every eye to the small bundle in the arms of Damon's most trusted guard. Their son, barely 2 months old, but already showing the bright intelligence that marked him as special, seemed to glow with an inner light that pulsed in rhythm with his parents' heartbeats. "Even he approves," Damon laughed softly, moving to take their child into his arms. The baby's tiny fingers immediately wrapped around his father's larger one, and Arya watched in wonder as the infant's unusual golden eyes, a perfect blend of her brown and Damon's silver, seemed to look directly at each assembled alpha with ancient wisdom. Not dominance, she realized with sudden clarity, watching their son's effect on the crowd. Unity. He's going to bring them together, not rule over them. The celebration that followed lasted well into the night, but Arya found herself treasuring the quiet moments most. The way Damon's hand never left hers, how the former enemy alphas approached her with genuine respect rather than fear, and the growing sense that they had indeed changed something fundamental in their world. Later, as they stood on their private balcony overlooking the moonlit gardens while their son slept peacefully in the royal nursery, Damon pulled her against his chest. "Any regrets?" he asked, his chin resting atop her head. Arya thought of Marcus, of the betrayal that had nearly destroyed her, of the rogues and the prophecy and all the pain that had led her here to this perfect moment. Only that it took us so long to find each other. His arms tightened around her. "We have forever now." "Forever," she agreed, watching the stars wheel overhead while their bond hummed with contentment and infinite possibility. In the distance, wolves howled, not in challenge or aggression, but in celebration of their queen and the new world she would help create.